Hello, everyone, and welcome again to RTS Masterminds. Today's topic is going to be all about remasters and remakes in the RTS space. We've got Dawn of War coming up as a remaster, and we can contrast that with games like Age of Mythology Retold, which is more in the remake category, basically remade from the ground up. Quick introductions. I'm Balint Martin, lead systems designer on Titan Quest 2 at Grimlore Games. Before I had more of an RTS past. This is an ARPG game I'm working on right now with the team. Uh, but before I was working on pretty much only strategy games with Total War Warhammer 2, Halo Wars 2, Age of Mythology.
And I'm Brandon. I'm the lead game designer on Tempest Rising. I've also done a bunch of indie stuff, and I run the blog Wayward Strategy. It's great to be back, Balint. It's good to get this train rolling again. And yeah, big news, right? With Dawn of War 2. I'm not Dawn of War 2, geez Louise. Dawn of War Remastered being announced.
Maybe they can do that
Um,
next.
that's my personal favorite in the series, and I know that's kind of a controversial opinion, but I just think it's the most pure fun to play, and I feel like it's held up a little better for the competitive community than the original Dawn of War.
Don't they play the modded version there with, as I recall, the
Generally
Elite mod, or
speaking, yeah, there's
I think
a
that's
couple
it.
of big mods for Dawn of War 2. Yeah, the Elite mod's the big
Mm.
one. But it's mostly just balance changes and extra maps. It's not a huge rethink. But yeah,
It goes a long way.
there's tons of mods out there for the original, and I think that might be an interesting place to start because that's one of the most exciting things about the Dawn of War remastered announcement is the improved uh, architecture and
Mm.
modding capabilities for the game.
Yes, so
Um,
basically the idea is there that Relic wants to work closely with the modders so that it's going to be pretty plug and play to get the old mods rolling again, which is rather cool.
yeah, absolutely. Um, that's definitely to me the most exciting part. I'm a big Relic guy. Uh, I've always liked uh, Dawn of War, Dawn of War 2. I got into Company of Heroes 2 and 3 more recently. That's really like their gameplay model, and being able to come back to the original is really inherently exciting to me.
I'm a Relic
Um,
guy too, but further in the past, like Homeworld 2, that kind of stuff. That's
Going
me.
back
I did a
to
lot of modding
Impossible
on those.
Creatures.
No, not that far.
I remember Impossible Creatures. I thought that was really cool. That was like the peak of being able to create your own units.
Mm.
Um, okay, so let's take one step back. I got a little out over my skis. Specifically, what the game is called is Dawn of War Definitive Edition. And we get a lot of this sort of thing, right? We've got definitive editions, retold, remastered. There's kind of a pretty standard naming convention for this sort of project now, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it just keeps coming back at this point. Can't get rid of it.
but this it's similar to what happened with Age of Empires 2 before they did the actual full remake, as they did the definitive edition, which was like taking what was already there and like revamping it a little
Mm.
bit. I think that actually still got a decent number of players, despite the fact there's all these other Age of Empires games out there. But specifically, what is in the definitive edition, um, they are claiming remastered visuals. We can talk about that a little bit, as well as 4K upscaling. Um, Enhanced netcode, that's pretty cool, and with matchmaking. Um, Customizable hotkeys, full mod support, all the expansions at once, and then they say potential new content. So I guess we'll see what happens with that after their initial launch.
Yeah, like, they definitely made the new textures pretty sharp, so the game actually looks not half bad, but it certainly doesn't look like it belongs in the current decade, right? Like,
Right, and that's
it's
one of the
markedly
things
old.
that's one of the things we wanted to talk about, right? Like
Mm.
hearing, I remember very distinctly my reactions. Actually, at first, I thought that people on my Discord were just having some fun, and they just posted an old trailer for the original game. Then I actually clicked on it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're doing a remaster." Like we'd heard rumors, but it's still really exciting to get the confirmation. Um, and then when I started seeing the footage, I was like, "Wow, that's not as far as I would have hoped it would have gone." Right?
Right.
Um, like it looks like there's some lighting changes, and they've kind of upscaled the like aspect ratios and stuff, but the actual models all look like they're the same. Maybe with some improvements to the textures that are applied to the models, but it looks like a lot of it is
Well, the
very
textures
similar.
are hugely improved, but the models themselves, yeah, they're the same or look the same.
So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that approach? About kind of taking what they already had and just upscaling it?
Well, I think it has to really deliver in the other areas for this to work, right? So you mentioned all the extra quality of life stuff like hotkeys. Well, it's not really quality of life; it's pretty essential, pretty freaking essential in RTS, you know. But get that right, get the netcode right, make matchmaking good, add proper ranked. Then we're talking, right? That definitely revitalizes the game, especially with the mods
That's
working. But if
that's
it's underwhelming, then what's the big
that's
difference,
personally
right?
a big one for me though. There's a lot of classic RTS that I would go back and play all the time if it had convenient working ranked ladder matchmaking. Um, that coming back alone has a good chance of really revitalizing um, the community and the workshop integration and being able to have a more robust like modding environment. That's also really exciting. Um, but yeah, I think the visuals for me were a little bit of a letdown, and part of the reason is we've seen a lot of recent remasters and remakes go a lot further
Yeah.
with this sort of thing. Um, you know, famously we had the Warcraft 3 Reforged, which uh the the visual updates there were really controversial, and maybe that's part of the reason that they wanted to keep it a little simpler because most people who play Warcraft 3 right now, I think they still don't use the reforged graphics. Um, there's a lot of video essays out there from veteran players like Grubby and others who kind of pick apart the visuals and why they worked better in the original than in the new one. So it's definitely a gamble.
Mm. You
Um,
have to really respect what the original was trying to do and make it work within the visual language of the game to still make everything distinctive and readable. Something that Warcraft 3, to be honest, kind of failed with. It's pretty, right? There's definitely good models, but when you completely change the sizing of the models and uh, some of the VFX just overlap a little bit too much, so as to disturb the readability of larger battles, that's not a good thing. And they're definitely
yeah,
not going to have this problem in Dawn of War if they're not going too crazy with the lighting, right? So that
right.
is a safe thing in that sense.
I think so. And depending on how they're like if they're using the same engine, they may be more limited with some of that too. I don't know too much about how they're handling things in the back end, like but they could also be functionally limited in how much they can do, depending on how they're building this.
Right. Well, it does look like a at least very similar iteration of their engine. So
Yeah,
visually
and I think there's
speaking, there
there's
isn't a large difference there.
right.
But is that a
Um
problem for casuals? Do you think?
um so I think the advantage that they have here is they have a big audience that really likes this game that are going to probably come back and experience the same thing again. That's kind of this why remasters happen from a business perspective. We saw that with the Command and Conquer remaster. We saw that with uh, Age of Mythology. There's a lot of people our age who played these games when they were new that are very nostalgic about them. So I think they're gonna have a pretty good capture rate with that audience. It might be a little lower than it theoretically could have been. Because again, I'm a big Dawn of War guy, and my first reaction was like, "Wow, yes!" And then when I saw the footage, I was like, "Oh well, that doesn't look as much better as I was hoping it could have." So I think you're going to get some of that, and then people will kind of be happy when they're playing it again and reliving those experiences. Um, for capturing new players, which arguably isn't really what a remaster is for, they'll probably have a lower rate than they could have with more enhancements to the graphics. That
Yeah,
would be
I
my
guess there's all this extra
assessment.
cost associated with trying to remake the game visually speaking, right? Age of Mythology was a remake in more ways than just the visuals. They've revamped the gameplay, so that's an entirely different animal. We'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, there is this risk that you're leaving people on the table that are just not going to be interested because, well, the audio visual experience is going to be samesies, more or less.
Yeah. And the other thing actually that I think this is probably a good time to bring up. From what I understand, they're not doing big overhauls to the gameplay or the balance, um, which is another potential issue. This game was created back before we had a lot of the same sort of telemetry and stats tracking that we have now. Um, and there are some actual issues with some of the balance and gameplay that I would have been really hyped to see like we're redoing the balance, we're reconfiguring this, um, you know, in multiplayer to be more competitive.
Oh, I'm sure
Um,
they'll tweak things, but what
I
specifically
hope so. I
are you
certainly
worried
hope
about?
so. Um, honestly, there's no one specific change that I would be hoping to see. One of my biggest frustrations with kind of the general gameplay model is that once things start to tip toward one player, it's usually very snowbally.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
uh, and with evenly matched players, it goes back and forth a lot more as you'd expect in most RTS. But my experience in the original Dawn of War is once you lose a couple of listening posts, it's really hard to get any sort of momentum back, and I'm concerned that that's going to carry forward if they're not doing a lot of work on reevaluating how the game plays out.
Mm.
So it'd be nice, yeah, if you had some like build time adjustments and some damage ratio stuff. That's probably safe to assume that it's going to happen at some point. Um, but I'm worried that they may be not going as far as they need to with that. But I guess we'll see. That again. That's frankly for me that is more a concern than anything that I've seen confirmed outright. So as I always like to say to people, they take this sort of thing with a grain of salt. This is, kind of a personal thing for me because,
So you'd like a
um,
longer game duration or a more stable gameplay,
yeah, I
basically.
would say, yeah, more stable, and that's because that's one of the things I like about the newer games, like Company of Heroes 2 and 3. You get a lot more of that back and forth.
Mm.
Um, and I just feel like the game is very close to being optimal there, and I'm hoping that we get some adjustments from their design team to make that more stable.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more as well. I mean, they didn't really give us much to work with, but uh, there it is. We'll learn more soon, and when we do, maybe we'll talk about it again. But as for Age of Mythology, that's a completely different animal, right? And it's been out for uh, it's coming up to its year.
Wow.
Not too far out now at this point. And yeah, basically it's already gotten a large DLC, right?
Hmm.
A small one as well with a god pack, and there's more of those coming. But Age of Mythology, it really revamped the gameplay, not just the audio visual experience, which was completely redone in an iteration of the Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition engine. So that's a whole rotation they did there. But yeah, it's super cool. I think they did a great job with with the new art, the VFX, the sounds. Although they recently broke the sounds, that's a
Oh
big.
no.
Oh god, it's like all the volumes are mixed up. They fade out at the distance, so you give unit commands and some sounds don't play. What the hell have they done there? Oh, anyway, it
That's a
was so
bummer.
good. Please unbreak it. Uh,
I'm sure they will. We actually have a funny story in Tempest Rising where I accidentally broke a unit ability.
oh no.
Um, um, in Tempest Rising, the Igniter, he's their tier 2 flamethrower unit for the Dynasty. He has an ability that he unlocks as you go up the tech tree that allows him to throw in a palm grenade. And players were requesting that we increase the range of that, which I did. But I also increased the spread to be equal to the range. So basically, what happens is when you throw the grenade, it lands in a random spot, a giant area, and he can even hit himself with it.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, so we've got it fixed, but yeah, that was definitely on me. And it's a hilarious bug, and I'm okay with it. I own that. But yeah, so going back to Age of Mythology, this shows a completely different philosophy for what a
Yeah.
remaster or a remake would look like, right? And it's interesting to compare and contrast those. Because Age of Mythology is really taking a new gameplay engine with new assets and pretty much by hand recreating this other experience, right?
And it feels alien,
Um,
man. Like you play the original and then you go into this. Everything feels more floaty, so to say. The units, the walk animations are different, so they just don't quite respond in the exact same ways. It feels like you're playing a different game, but it's familiar because you know all the content, obviously. So they didn't really change of what you get from like each god and civilization. That's all the same, but there are little mechanical differences within.
yeah, so like the numbers are the same. This you've got the same damage values and the same
Uh,
costs for things. Well, I mean, obviously they've tweaked those,
a lot.
um,
Yeah, the
but
systems work different, so
fundamental
have to.
experience things are different. Um, like you said, things like walk cycles and it's not maybe acceleration. Maybe could be some of the differences where the Age of Empires 3 engine included some sort of um new parameters for how velocity is
Well, nothing feels the same. The
calculated or
formations
something.
don't feel the
Right.
same. The collisions don't feel the same. So you got like way smoother melee combat, which is a blessing and a curse because, well, everything just kind of uh, gets into surround mode very quickly. It's not quite StarCraft Zergling esque, but it's more in that direction than what the original AOM slippery units, as I used to say, in basically all my commentaries. You would just have your villagers are basically like oiled up. They get raided by cavalry and they just slip right through. It's
It's
that's the old
hilarious.
game. New game, you put something in front of them, they're not going past.
Yeah.
So it's a very lethal game compared to the old one. Um, but it's also very A movie. So A move, attack move, it didn't used to work well in the original. So the engine improvements just bring these differences in, that basically StarCraftified the gameplay a little bit. So you just start with your attack move, and your army generally performs really well, and then you add in your orders to fine tune that.
That's actually an interesting topic we might want to tackle at some point about how um, things that make the gameplay more convenient can actually detract from the game after a certain point. And the process behind evaluating what is a convenience for players to make the game more approachable versus what's actually stripping things out of the game. That could be something interesting for us to talk about at some point, because that's a really, really dense topic with a lot of uh, examples from various games, including, it sounds like, from Age of Mythology. I was never a big Age of Mythology guy. I played Age of Empires 1, Age of Empires 2, and then I actually skipped AOM and Age of Empires 3 and then online in 4. Um, so I've got kind of a gap in my Age of Empires resume. But I've experienced the new one. I just don't have a lot of the new Age of Mythology. I just don't have a lot of points of comparison to the original.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean,
Um,
that's gonna be most people, to be honest. Like, they
yeah,
return after having played the original in what 2004 with the expansion, and then, well, I guess there was the re-release, which was actually a lot more like the Dawn of War situation that we just discussed, but markedly not an upgrade over the original game. That's that was an unfortunate little chapter in Age of Mythology's life. We don't have to talk about it much. It was just
well, it
really
actually might be
ugly.
interesting. It actually might be interesting to talk about because one of the things that we
Okay.
went into this conversation do was to compare and contrast the idea of a definitive edition, which is what Dawn of War is doing, versus um, a remake like the Age of Mythology remake, and the fact that we see both for Age of Mythology um, actually gives us an interesting point of comparison. Because this is one of the things we were talking about before when we were planning this episode is is there a better way to do this? We have all these different versions out there where we have um again, Age of Empires 2 is an example of this where they released the definitive edition and then they released the redo later. And that's like the most one of, if not the most popular RTS right now. Um but then we have things uh like Warcraft Reforged, which were trying to be more daring and kind of drop the ball with it. So I think that's the interesting question is, um, the pros and cons of a remake versus a remaster.
Well,
Um,
the Age of Mythology Extended Edition and Age of Empires 2 HD Edition back in the early 2010s, those were like the minimalist approaches, right? They go even less far, I would say, than this new Dawn of War is trying to go for. They literally just were about re-releasing the games, making it work with the Steam infrastructure, and allowing you to basically play it on a modern system with the proper new aspect ratios, 16 to 9, and supporting high resolutions and all that. But they weren't particularly made to look much better. They tried, kind of didn't work, or made it worse in some cases, even. And I think both games in particular really struggled with network code. So it ended up being this laggy mess in online games, and for whatever reason took way more system resources than required. So people's graphics cards were completely maxed out on Age of Mythology Extended Edition for years and years and years, and people just weren't able to play it properly. It's a very sad chapter for AOM, definitely. So people actually stuck in multiplayer to the original game on a third-party client called Vubly, and that's how they did their matchmaking. It's kind of like MSN Zone for the really old AOE2 players. But the AOE2 players were also on Vubly until the definitive editions came around, which were the
mm,
actually good. remasters. So that's the story behind that. But I think what is being attempted here is an in between version with Dawn of War. So more than AoE 2 HD, but less than AoE 2 definitive, because that completely redid all the graphics, all the visual assets, all the animations, uh, completely redone basically.
So, I guess from a pros perspective, people who have been playing Dawn of War this whole time aren't going to have an issue like with what we're describing with Age of Mythology, where it feels different on a fundamental level to play.
No,
The units should behave exactly the same way, which is definitely a pro. On the cons, you're getting less of a visual upgrade than people might want, which also is kind of a pro because we can see that there have been issues before where the updated visuals are not to players' likings. So I think you're right. I think maybe they're being kind of careful about this. They're trying to give people enough to feel like they're getting something new and meaningful, but they're not going so far and getting out over their skis and making potential game killing mistake. Because something like Dawn of War 3 visuals on this might not be as palatable to some of the hardcore players. Like I want my um Dreadnought to look like Dawn of War 1 Dreadnought. Um
oh, did I mention that the AOM remasters, both of them broke the mods, so you had to remake them for both versions.
yeah,
And right now, uh, in the newest one, there are mods that cannot be made.
because
You
of
can't
what
add new
feature
units.
changes. Okay.
You can't import new assets and whatnot. So it's really tough there. There
Well, this
are
is going to
risks to
be a
doing this.
this is going to be a big thing for the modding community. There's going to be a lot of mods that were created at one point but aren't updated anymore. The creators moved on to do something else with their lives.
Yeah.
So those mods probably will be going away, and then some of the more popular ones will have to be remade probably to fit the new architecture. So it'll be interesting to see because it sounds like they're trying to work with the modding communities. I think you had said that. I don't know if that was earlier in our conversation or before we started
Yeah, I'm not
the
sure exactly
episode.
in what way though. Like, will it be possible to just import the old stuff?
I would I would assume no. That there would have to be at least some changes to have these things refactored to work with
Hmm.
the new version. So there'll definitely be some actual reason for some people to stick with the older games if those mods aren't going to be supported in the new one.
No such thing as free money, they say.
But overall, definitely a promising, hopeful moment for the Dawn of War community because um, I think a lot of people who had really been hoping for something impressive with Dawn of War 3 kind of lost a lot of hope. There's people out there saying that there was never going to be another Dawn of War after 3, like that was the death knell for the franchise, and this could be a bright spot on the horizon for people that like that franchise.
I'd love for the franchise to catch its break, to be honest here.
I'd love a 4, absolutely. Um,
I'm
that's
gonna
one
say
thing I've
something
always
crazy. I'd even love for them to try and fix free.
honestly, honestly, I don't think it would have taken as much work as some people speculate to get 3 to a good spot. You've seen we've seen recently what Relic did with Company of Heroes 3. That had a really rough launch. Still got a ton of players. Players are much happier on average now with the game. They put yeoman's work into continuing to work on Dawn of War 3. And honestly, thinking back to Dawn of War 2, they worked on that game for years, um, doing some fairly major revamps in some points. Um, Relic is known for being able to pursue improvements in their games. Um, I think they could have ironed out a lot of the bigger issues with
Yeah,
Dawn
but
of War
they
3 without.
genuinely did not try with free. They just threw in the towel immediately. It was so uncharacteristic of Relic, and I mean the leadership at the time. What were they thinking? I just can't put it into words how frustrating that
Yep.
was to watch.
Well, we can only speculate what was going on behind the scenes there. We've seen what Relic likes to do with their games. They put a lot of work into the long tail support for their games. So it's hard to guess from the outside
Hmm.
um, what was going on and who may have ultimately been responsible and where in the chain of command that responsibility fell. Um, but yeah, I do think that Dawn of War 3 is very uncharacteristic for Relic to have dropped support that relatively soon after its launch.
Yeah, but we'll see if they ever try to touch that thing again. They could remake it and just completely change some aspects,
I would
retold style.
guess I would guess that what they're hoping is that this does well and proves interest in a new Dawn of War project, and then they would make a Dawn of War 4.
So you
I
wouldn't do the free fix thing.
um I, personally I would like to see that because I feel like Dawn of War 3 had some promise. Um from a business standpoint, I'm not sure it makes sense to take their least popular product and try to build on top of it.
Hmm.
Um I think going from a remaster to say, look, people are still excited about this to launching a new one to say let's capitalize on this and let's continue the franchise, or at least do a Dawn of War 2 remaster because there's definitely a lot of room that they could build on Dawn of War 2. They had the last stand mode that they could keep adding characters for. There's a ton of different factions that could be inserted into Dawn of War 2. Um, and that's again another property that already has a built-in player base. So I would think either after the remaster, either a Dawn of War 2 remaster or a Dawn of War 4 makes more sense than 3.
Well, that's very rational of you to suggest. Yeah. I,
That's
I'm
boring,
on
right?
emotion about Dawn of War 3. I'm not gonna lie. But I just don't like a decent RTS game being made and then not being given any chance. I know the launch was abysmal, right? I watched it, I played it. Couldn't stream it because of the Sega affiliation at the time, but I would have liked to. But then to see it immediately abandoned, that was just brutal to me. And I know there were a lot of underlying problems there, that it was MOBA esque and whatnot. Maybe a discussion for another episode. Though, do you have any final
I
thoughts
have
on
a
the? Oh, you have
I have a
something.
whole I have a whole article that I wrote for my blog about um what RTS can learn from MOBAs. Um, but my thought is that what Dawn of War 3 tried to do was not taking the right lesson from the popularity of MOBAs. But I'd love to talk about that at some point, though. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack there. Um, but yeah, honestly, to wrap this conversation up, when I came into this conversation with you, I was feeling really pessimistic about the Dawn of War um, definitive edition. I was thinking, I really wish they would have pushed it further. But talking this through with you, I've increasingly felt like they're trying to make a smart decision um, by pushing the technical aspects harder than the visuals, um, because that's where the longevity really lies. Is improving the multiplayer, improving the modding capability, um, improving the underlying technology underneath of the game. Um, so I'm actually feeling a lot more positive about the whole idea than I was when I came into this call.
Right. I do think it is better for the hardcore players to focus on the underlying aspects and the technicals. I would, however, say that the audiovisual stuff. does matter a lot for the initial sales. For the people that come back to play through the campaign one time exactly, and then never to be
Um,
seen again. But that's a very
yeah,
important demographic. It can be 80-90% of your players. So to prop the numbers up business wise, uh, we got the rational me. Oh my god, found it. Yeah, that's pretty important to consider, and I wouldn't necessarily want to pit one against the other. It's a very difficult decision. If you can have both, do both, but they're at least doing something in both areas.
yeah. And I hate feeling like a I'm always referring back to my game, but I think one thing that really helped Tempest Rising um is that we're a pretty game. Um, like you like to look at the screenshots, you like to look at the videos. There are people that I've seen discussing it that are like even your multiplayer map screenshots look like they could come out of a campaign. There's definitely a lot to be said for something that just looks attractive. That's gonna grab a whole the interest of a whole bunch of players that you might not have gotten otherwise. I think for a remaster though, you're mostly tapping into people who already have this game or it did at one point um, buy this game. The idea of being attractive to a new generation of gamers, um, man, that would be like the icing on top of the cake, right? Um, that you can say like all these people that weren't even born when the game first came out, come try this again. Look how cool it looks. Can't you why don't you come back and get in the mix with us? I feel like they probably will lose something there. But I really think that appealing to your core audience first and foremost is important. And it feels like that's what they're trying to do with this.
Can I just say I am actually extremely skeptical about the younglings playing? Maybe we can do an episode on that at some point. I really want to dig into that topic because
The
it's a
aging
huge
demographic
problem.
of RTS players.
Yeah, it's just strategy, honestly. It's not just RTS, it's all of it. What do we do? It's even a
That
problem
might
in
be
my current games genre, Titan Quest. Like ARPGs also have this problem where the younglings don't really play this.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, that would be interesting to tackle. Because that's I think something as the genre mature, not just the genre, but gaming as a whole matures, we're going to increasingly deal with. Like my dad is in his 60s and he still plays video games, but his tastes have kind of narrowed as
To
he's grown
Tempest
older.
Rising, right?
He keeps wanting to play with me, but he's not really the core audience. Actually, my dad is really into VR stuff, so he's not
Ooh.
really on your normal bell curve for older gamers. But I actually would have thought that strategy games would be more popular because we see a lot of like Hearts of Iron is huge, um, and the Total War games are massive. Um,
Yes, but that's also
so
our age group. So people like it, sure, but it's the same demographic.
yeah,
But okay, I think we can call it here. As usual, people can leave comments. We'll try to respond. We've got a Patreon where we do early releases, and the patrons get a secret Discord, which is so secret I can't tell you what's in there. Okay, we'll have some cool topic next time as well, and that's where we will see you next.